Hi guys, it's Wendy from Ask the Landlady, and I'm here with all the tips and tricks to help you make a profit in real estate rentals. And today's question is, how do I value a real estate property? Okay, say you're running down the street and you're like, oh, that's a pretty nice duplex. I'd like to buy it. And it's not actually for sale. How do you figure out a price that maybe you can buy it? I know most people would go on Zillow, oh, it's worth that. I would take all that with a grain of salt. Again, if somebody has an asking price and it's actually for sale and they're like, I want 179,000. Great, you know a starting point, right? You can go in there and get my spreadsheet on askthelandlady.com, figure out what you could rent it for, whether or not you'd make money on it, and then you'd kind of get an idea of what you could offer for the property, right? But say there's no starting point, there's no price on it because it is not for sale. I've bought my best deals on cold calls, just going in and saying, I've admired your fourplex here. It's a great location. I'd love to buy it, and then what do you think? A lot of times they're like, oh, and they're like, they don't want to throw out the first price and they're nervous about it. I'd say, I can do some analysis and I can offer you a price. And they kind of like that. But then they have to kind of tell me what they're renting things for. And we can kind of go from there and do that. Because in general, there's like three ways to value a property in the world of valuation. If you talk to an appraiser, say, first one is just the sales comparison approach. You've done that if you bought a house. They go through the block and say, well, this house sold for this sold for that, this sold for that in the last 2 years, and they come up with an appraisal based on those comparable sales. It's kind of what Zillow does, right? Like, goes to an area, this is what an average 3-bedroom house goes for on this block, and they come up with that sales comparison approach. Insurance companies do a cost approach. So, like if this burnt down, what would it cost to rebuild it? Okay, that's not real applicable for our types of things, but it does come into play when you're looking at what types of insurance you would place on the property if you needed to value it for insurance purposes. Last one that's probably more applicable to real estate investors is the income capitalization approach. And this can get kind of complicated. Check out my books. I discuss it further and tell you all about net operating income and cap rates and that type of thing. But kind of just off the cuff is where I admired that fourplex, right? So I would find out what their income would be, off of those. And I would take that net operating income and divide it by my estimated rate of return, right? Like, what return do I want to get in the market? I want to get at least 10%, right? It's not worth my while. I could put it in the stock market or something. So if you get a comparable property that sold for $500,000 with a net operating income of 50,000, there's a 10% capitalization rate. And then you would divide your net operating income by that cap rate to determine the value based on income. See, I told you that was very complicated. Get the book or look it up online to figure out how to do that type of approach. But that's something where you can get an actual number. Then when you kind of have that number and you can explain to somebody, this is a standard way I've come up with this price, right? Because there were no other fourplexes for sale in the area. I had a hard time finding a sales approach. So this is what a number that I came up with. And then you're going to take that number, put it in my spreadsheet with the rents and the expenses and make sure that you're going to make a good rate of return on that. If you're not, then you're going to go back to the drawing board and scratch that number and say, well, based on these rents, you're going to just plug things in to get a little magical number that you can take to them and say, you know what, I can offer you 150,000 for that right now, boom, and see how that works for you. So again, it's not always easy to figure out a valuation when you don't know. Another good thing is maybe go to some of your real estate friends and say, what would you value that as? Especially if they live out of the area, and then you can kind of, cobble together a price, because if they haven't given you a starting point, you've got to pick the starting point. I always prefer the other person to give me a number to work with. I, behind the scenes, I'm thinking in my head, I'm doing these valuations and figuring out, I think that's worth 150. But what if I go to them and then I say, well, you think about it and you let me know, and I'm doing my analysis. Have you thought about that? And they said, yeah, you know what? I'd sell it for 140,000. Well, what if I'd offered 150? I'd have lost out on $10,000. So you definitely always want to get that starting point from the seller if you can. If you can't and they're just stymied by it, then you're going to do your analysis and value the property and figure it out. Either way, you're going to do the analysis because you need to know what it's worth. Because they may come to you and say, oh, I'd sell it for $300,000. You're like, no, that's not going to cash flow. So thank you, but no thank you. and you can show them your analysis and show them why it wouldn't work for you. But again, either way, you're going to end up looking at these methods and valuing the property. I feel like I rambled on this one, but I hope you got something out of it. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to value a property from scratch without any other knowledge? Because sometimes you own like a piece of property that there's nothing to compare it to, or something's gotten over improved for the neighborhood and you can't really use that sales comparison approach. I'd love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments, because again, we only do best when we learn from each other, and that way we all make a profit. Have a great day.